production. Short history of Eritrea from 1800 to 2023. In the early 19th century, Eritrea was divided into several small kingdoms and sultanates, including the kingdoms of Medri, Bari and Hamasien, and the sultanates of Sahel and Bogos. In the 1860s, the Egyptian Khedivate conquered the coastal areas of Eritrea, including the port city of Massawa, which became an important trade center in the Red Sea. In 1885, Italy colonized Eritrea, which became part of Italian East Africa in 1936. The Italian colonial administration established a centralized bureaucracy, built infrastructure, and introduced modern education and health care. However, Italian colonization also brought forced labor, land confiscation, and discrimination against the indigenous population, which was mostly Christian and Muslim. Eritreans resisted Italian colonization through uprisings, such as the 1894 rebellion led by Ras Alula and the 1928 rebellion led by Abraha di Boke. However, these were brutally suppressed by the Italian colonial army, which used aerial bombing and concentration camps to crush the resistance. In World War II, the British liberated Eritrea from Italian rule and established a military administration. During this period, Eritreans hoped for independence, but the British government decided to incorporate Eritrea into Ethiopia, which was seen as a more stable and friendly neighbor than the newly independent Sudan. In 1950, the United Nations General Assembly voted to make Eritrea an autonomous region within Ethiopia, which sparked Eritrean nationalism and a struggle for independence. The Eritrean people felt that they were being colonized again by Ethiopia, which had a different language, culture, and religion, Orthodox Christianity, than the Eritreans. The Eritrean Liberation Front, ELF, was founded in 1960 to fight for independence, and it was supported by other African liberation movements, such as the Algerian National Liberation Front and the Pan-African Congress. During the 1950s, Eritrean nationalists formed political parties, such as the Eritrean Liberation Movement and the Unionist Party, to advocate for different visions of Eritrea's future. Some favored independence, while others favored federation with Ethiopia or a loose confederation with other East African states. However, the Ethiopian government under Emperor Haile Selassie rejected all these proposals and imposed a policy of assimilation and repression on the Eritreans. The 1950s also saw a wave of student protests and strikes in Eritrea, which were inspired by the anti-colonial and socialist movements in Africa and the world. These protests demanded better education, social justice, and human rights for Eritreans, and they were met with police brutality and imprisonment. In conclusion, the history of Eritrea from 1800 to 1950 is marked by a series of external conquests and internal resistance, which shaped the identity and aspirations of the Eritrean people. The Italian colonization and British military rule introduced modernization and global connections, but also exploitation and subordination. The Ethiopian annexation and suppression sparked a national liberation struggle that lasted for several decades and culminated in the independence of Eritrea in 1993. In 1960, Eritrea was federated with Ethiopia after a UN-supervised referendum. In 1961, the Eritrean Liberation Front, ELF, was formed, launching a 30-year armed struggle for independence. In 1974, a Marxist coup in Ethiopia led to increased repression in Eritrea and intensified the independence struggle. In 1991, the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, EPLF, defeated Ethiopian forces and Eritrea gained independence. In 1993, Eritrea became a sovereign state with Isaias Afwerki as its first president. In 1998, a border dispute with Ethiopia escalated into a 2-year war that left tens of thousands dead. In 2001, Eritrea implemented a new constitution, but elections were never held and the country remains a one-party state. In 2018, Afwerki signed a peace deal with Ethiopia, leading to the reopening of borders and the resumption of diplomatic relations. However, despite the peace deal, Eritrea has been criticized for its human rights abuses, including indefinite national service and restrictions on freedom of speech and the press. As of 2023, Eritrea remains a one-party state under the rule of President Isaias Afwerki, without political freedoms and speech of freedom, a struggling economy.